She was more dedicated than any writer I'd ever met. Certainly, she was very famous when I met her.
Strangers on a Train, Miss Highsmith. It was bought by a celebrated film director.
Yes, Hitchcock took an interest in it.
What I wonder is, you don't admire Ripley. He is a killer.
Yes, but lately he kills only when he thinks it's right.
Toutes les filles étaient complètement fascinées parce que c'était Patricia Highsmith. Pat en a bien profité, hein. Ça c'est sûr.
I may not be capable of love. I want something romantic, perhaps not definite.
Pat was revered for her pseudonymous novel, Carol.
She was gay, and anybody didn't use their own name on a gay book because of family, because of her mother. Her mother was a bitch.
A woman was supposed to act like a boy. You didn't veer off of that.
Writing, of course, is a substitute for the life I cannot live, am unable to live.
Highsmith is the most famous unknown writer America has ever produced. She's famous in Europe, almost unknown here. Born in her grandmother's boarding house in Fort Worth, Texas in 1921, she was born 9 days after her mother divorced her father, and her mother went off to Chicago to be an illustrator, left her with her grandmother. This was the author of much of her problems in later life, and she never forgot them. Highsmith is the author of 2 books of which you will surely have heard. One is Strangers on a Train, written in 1950 and made into a legendary film by Alfred Hitchcock. The second book, The Talented Mr. Ripley. After she wrote Strangers on a Train, which is probably the book that's best known here, her first novel, she wrote her only novel about 2 women. It's a lesbian love story which has an almost happy ending. She published it in 1952, unheard of for then, a really radical conception for the early 1950s. She was so guilty and ashamed at being homosexual that she couldn't bear to publish it under her own name, so she published it under a pseudonym. And when finally, in 1990, she was persuaded by her English publishers to publish this novel under her own name, she changed the title. So something about the book was always in disguise. It had to be in disguise for her to publish it. It's a perfect period piece. She exiled herself to Europe because she wanted to get away from her family, and she fell in love, and her work was instantly recognized in Europe. In Europe, she's spoken of on the level of Dostoevsky and Kafka. Here, she was constantly reviewed as a crime writer or a suspense writer. She's much more interesting than that. Though, nothing wrong with a good crime novel, or a good murder, for that matter, but she took the form and turned it on its head. She's our most autobiographical novelist. Everything that happened to her shows up somewhere in a novel. Murder to her was as interesting and as important as love. Many reasons for this. One of them being that from the age of 12, she decided that she was a boy in a girl's body. For 6 months, she was in strict Freudian therapy. She wanted not to be gay. She was trying to normalize herself. So she went to a strict Freudian therapist who thought it would be a great idea to put Highsmith in a group therapy with a lot of other women who were also trying to normalize themselves. Highsmith thought, whoopee, how many of these women can I seduce? That was her response to 6 months of therapy. Like all really complicated people, she had thousands of different characters inside her, and depending on the situation she was in, and this is a point that is brought out again and again in her novels, she could rotate her aspects and out would come another character.
Pat was not a good person. That's just the most concise way to put it. She was generally unlikable and difficult to be around. She was nasty, anti-Semitic, racist, misogynistic, stingy, and selfish. She was an alcoholic. She had an eating disorder for her entire life. She had mommy issues like crazy, which probably isn't the best way to put it, but that's what they were. She lived in fear of being outed, and it doesn't seem like it was just being outed. Like, it seemed like she was really truly afraid of being her authentic self. Those last few things, of course, don't automatically make anyone a bad person, but they do insinuate that Pat was a woman haunted by a lot of things.
She was so tempted to commit crimes herself, and did not do so. Many crimes of the heart, of course. She's, as I say all the time, not a crime writer, but a punishment writer. She's interested in the psychological punishment that follows a crime.